So right below my welcome screen in my code is where I collect user inputs. I do this with if statements inside infinite while loops. And I do this in a way where if the user enters a valid input, it breaks out of the infinite while loop and moves on to the next lines of code. However, if they enter an invalid input, it will inform them that the input they've given is invalid and will give them the opportunity to enter in an actual valid input. And once they have entered valid inputs for the customization options, so the survivor color, the survivor shape, and the wall color, these values that they've picked will be associated with parameters that will be used later in the game to customize it. So survivor color, the survivor shape, and the wall color. Below that is a lot of variables that get initialized, moved, which is self-explanatory, obtain check, which just checks is a variable to determine whether or not the player has obtained the water in this game. Two 9 by 14 matrices, which contain coordinates for the X and Y locations in order to plot the white paths on the subplots. The water location, which is usually hidden with a semicolon, but not right now, so I can see it. And it just returns a random integer between 2 and 9, and will plot it in a random subplot from 2 to 9. Below that is a matrix 3 by 3 that just corresponds with the subplot numbers. This is order to relate the player's row position and column position to their appropriate subplot. So a player in row 1, column 1 will be in subplot 1. The X and Y just relate to the player's X coordinate and Y coordinate. These are going to be used in the for loops later for the movement of the character. And then the X stop and Y stop is where the player character is going to stop once they move into the next subplot. For determining whether the player has moved in an allowable direction after plotting every other subplot in black and then plotting the player character and the appropriate room that they're in. It informs the player which quadrant they are currently in and then asks them which direction they want to go. The very first check is a while loop, which checks to see if they have input a valid direction. If they have not input 1, 2, 3, or 4, it'll inform them invalid direction, please choose another, and then allow them to select another direction. Once they have selected 1, 2, 3, or 4, it enters this while loop in which this large if statement containing failure criteria is basically meaning that if the player is in a certain position related to a certain direction, it informs them that they cannot move this way. So if they are in position 1, which is subplot 1, obviously they can't move north. Same with subplot 2 and subplot 3. Uh, if this criteria is met, it informs them which direction they are not able to move, and then tells them to please choose another and allows them to pick a new one. Once they have picked a direction in which they can move, the code moves towards 4 if statements, each of which corresponding to one of the directions, north, south, east, or west. For the direction, we'll say south, the player's coordinate is changed by an increment of some sorts all the way to the edge of the plot. So going south, the player moves from their current position down to the bottom of the plot they are currently in. While this is happening, the walls are painted, the paths are painted, and the character is plotted on their coordinates, and the for loop is the axis in which they're moving on. So this changes as the value of y in the for loop changes, or the value of x in the for loop changes. And there is a pause of 100 milliseconds to create the appearance of motion. Once the player reaches the edge of the subplot they're in, the subplot they were in is painted completely black. Their row or column changes, their moves increase, and their stop position, whether that be X stop or Y stop, changes appropriately. And for the second for loop, they begin at the edge of the next plot, the next active subplot, and then move at a certain increment towards their stop position. And while this is happening, the walls are painted, the paths are painted, and the marker is painted and pauses uh, for each run of the for loop for 100 milliseconds. But in this new area, there is a if statement that runs and checks if the water location, which was determined by that random integer, and the obtain check is 0, meaning the player has not obtained the water yet. If these two are true, then at the position where the player is going to stop, the key or the water in this instance is plotted. So moving into the area in which it is, there was the key. Once it is picked up, this obtain check turns to 1, and text is displayed saying you found the water, return to your group in quadrant 1. Once you have moved in a valid way to get to the starting position, this if statement becomes true. The position is subplot 1 and the obtain check is 1. It breaks from the main while loop, displays congratulations, informs you that you have successfully returned with the water and some amount of moves. And for the victory screen, a victory color is chosen, an RGB matrix with 3 random variables from 0 to 1, and a nested for loop changes the color of subplot 2 through 8. First, it changes the subplot, and then it picks a different color for the victory color, pauses for 300 milliseconds, then runs it again. Does this for all subplots 2 through 9, and then the outer for loop goes from 1 to 3. So this process repeats twice for a total of 3 times, and that's the game.